Well, yesterday, the U.S. Department of Education announced that it was cutting its workforce by nearly 50%, from 4,133 employees to about 2,183. Well, interview later in the day, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon acknowledged that the mass layoff was the first step in downsizing the department, quote, in eliminating the bureaucratic bloat. So here's the question. Will the downsizing impact education? And if so, how? Joining me now to discuss this and more, Congressman Burgess Owens, Vice Chair of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Utah. Congressman Owens, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. I look forward to this conversation, my friend. Absolutely.
Well, I know you've been on top of the education issue and been excited in anticipation of some changes at the Department of Ed. The mass layoffs that were announced, this was done with precision. It wasn't just chopped off. What we saw here, according to the new Secretary of Education, is that she wanted to make sure she kept the right people that were actually providing a valuable service, but cutting out the bureaucratic bloat. What do we know?
Well, Tony, first of all, that's the way the real world works. I'm so thankful to have Secretary McMahon in position. She's a business person. She understands this process. I came out of the marketplace, the private market. Motorola was one company, Nextel. Every company I've worked with have gone through a process of right sizing. It's called reduction in forces, because at the end of the day, it's all about the product. The product has to have a good return on investment. What we've had with the Department of Education since 1978 is a terrible return on investment. Our kids have been dumbed down. We've been made to be more divisive. We don't have the pride in our country, no connection with the fact of our founding fathers, and a God who actually had his hands all over our nation. So we're in a position right now of getting the best return on investment by getting rid of all the bloat. And I'm excited about business owners understanding the process and getting us there, because this is one area that we've never had this kind of conversation. That is the federal government. So I'm excited about it. It's well needed. I'll say this for those folks who don't really understand what this might mean. Imagine taking all the billions of dollars that's been wasted here for adults to have a lifestyle and not really have the input they need, and that money being sent out to each of the states. The things you're thinking about right now with your children, the options you might want to have with your child, the programs that will help your child and kids around them to really thrive, you now have the funds to do it because it's not being wasted here in D.C. So no, that's the concept. We the people can do much better without funding than having it for folks here in D.C. who have a totally different agenda and different priorities than most parents have in their hometowns.
Yeah, Congressman Owens, I want to go back to how you started your response there. That coming out of the private sector, you are accustomed to businesses doing reorganizations, doing reduction in workforces. I mean, that's just the nature of business. But when you look back at federal agencies, like let's take the Department of Education, which we're talking about, going back to the 70s, that never happens to federal agencies. They just keep going layer upon layer. It's like, just one civilization built upon the other. There's no reduction. It just keeps piling up.
And Tony, that's why we have to take a look at this time we're living in as a true blessing. These are remarkable times to finally say, as a people, because that's what we did on November 5th. We made a decision as a people what we're expecting. We want an audit from our government. We want to make sure that the money is going in the places we need to have them. We want a return on investment in places like education, which is the most important thing we can do. As one of our founders says, ignorant and free can never be. Well, if our children are trained to be ignorant, we're going to lose our culture. It's just a matter of time. We have a chance to reset this for generations to come. I'm so excited about being part of it. I think all of us should at some point take a pause and recognize that we are so blessed to be alive, to have these kind of conversations, be part of the solutions, because this will be intergenerational moving forward. And again, education is everything, and I'm excited about what we're going to be able to export out of this country to other nations, because we have so many good kids with so much potential. All they need to do is have a chance to learn how to think, how to dream, how to overcome, and how to have an appreciation for what we have right now in America.
So, Congressman, let's talk practical implications here. We're hearing all these press reports. This is going to affect the ability of children with disabilities. It's going to affect student aid. I mean, just all these different things we're hearing about. So, practically speaking, what will this do? How will parents and students across the country feel the impact of this, if at all?
Well, it's going to be a positive because keep in mind, for the first time we bring innovation. We're putting a focus on what the end game is as our kids, not adults. We're having people that understands what bloat looks like. Just as I started before, we have a certain amount of resources, and we need to prioritize the resources and make sure our kids are the smartest in the world. For the first time, we have people who are saying, it's not about how safe and how safe adults might feel and how a job might be an entitlement. It's about what is the product. The end result is what is the product with our kids. We're showing that the last 40, 50 years, our kids have been put last. And we're showing what unions can do when they prioritize mediocrity instead of meritocracy. So those are things that we now will see. Just get ready. You're going to find out that the Department of Education will work just fine. We're going to start taking and block granting funds to the state. So your state will start getting income that it would not have in the past. Your state, whoever's listening to this, will have income for your child to have choices and a better environment to grow and to prosper than they ever have, because it's not being wasted here in D.C. So get excited about it. I know it's a little bit concerning when we don't know exactly what the next step is. For many people, we're not around when the Department of Education was put in place, but we are in for a much better place, and I'm excited about, again, being part of that, about the process and that conversation.
Yeah, I was on my way out of school when the Department of Ed began operating in May of 1980, but
not too long ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. Let's talk about the superintendent of the nation's second largest public school system, the LA Unified School District in California, says the closure of the department would bring catastrophic harm if there's any reduction to the federal funding that students in his district receive. Well, you talked about being block granted, but let's also talk about the realities of how much money we're talking about. The federal government actually does not give that much money to education. It's right. About 7 to 10%, right, depending upon your state. It varies upon your state. But with that 7%, they try to tell you what to do with education, and they layer red tape upon red tape, which actually makes it more difficult for local governments, local school boards, and parents to obtain good education for their children.
Yep. With that little bit that we get, they send a lot of rules. The reason why we're having this conversation about men and girls sports and men and girls bathrooms because of the Department of Education. The focus is totally different. It's an ideology. It's Marxists who hate faith, family, free market education, running a bloat of an institution that has impacted every one of our states. So those who are fear mongering, which is what happens with the left, right, they have to teach us or help us believe that we cannot do it on our own, that we have to have them or we will not survive. I'm here to say that we, the people, are much stronger than that. We're tenacious, we're dreamers, we overcome, and we put our folks on the right things because we can control those things like our kids. So just get ready. Again, this is a different time. I would say have faith in those who understand how to run a business first. And right now we have a president, we have a Secretary McMahon. They understand this process. They also understand the power of education. Let's put our faith in people who want to change, disrupt the system that's not working for us. We have 70 to 80% of our kids, 3rd and 8th grades, not being able to read and write. That is failure in any sense of the word. So we're going to change that. Know it's going to get better, and know that the block grants will come to you, those that are listening to this, and you and your states and your districts will be able to decide how to best use that for your kids' growth. And by the way, we want to also put together a best of practice kind of repository. So across the country, parents and school boards can also see, what does that look like? What is the best way of doing this to move ahead, to get the best grades, to provide a best compensation for our teachers? That's another piece.
Right.
How can we make sure we bring the best people into this industry? And we'll start looking at all those innovative ways to bring the best minds to this industry. And those who don't want to do the job, those are mediocre, they'll find something else to do.
Yeah, Congressman Owens, I want to highlight what you said. This is a moment that we have an opportunity to do something different, which I think will be better. I mean, what you just said there about allowing the states to take the money and do what works best for them, and parents who are a part of the process in educating their children. I mean, I have 5 children, and each one of them kind of have learned differently. And so my wife we homeschool, we kind of crafted the learning toward them. And if that works for a family, just think what it does for a state. Instead of putting this one-size-fits-all on all 50 states, we allow the states to do what is best in terms of advancing the educational opportunities of their children living in their states.
And I think if you want to find a way to get parents engaged, they now know that they have a place, they have a seat at the table. And you're right, I have 6 kids and 17 grands. And what I love about Utah is they've been able to craft, each one of my kids has been able to craft a best way for their child based on their passion, based on the way they learn, to figure out how to get moving forward. Imagine parents now realizing that that's their place, that they have a seat at the table, and the love they have for their kids and the understanding of their acromens, their talents and skills. They can now bring that to the plate. And at the end of the day, as they succeed, those parents will know that they had a big part in making sure that happens. So I'm excited about where we are, Tony. This is something that so many Americans wish they could have been living during these days. We have a chance to really get our country back on track in so many ways, and education is the very top of the list.
It certainly is. I mean, education has been what has really kind of polluted the well, so to speak, and what we've seen, especially in higher education on college campuses across the country, where we have seen this anti-Semitism that has spread like wildfire. I mean, that didn't just happen. That's how the minds of students and, quite frankly, professors and teachers have been poisoned through the education system. And I want to get your response to that. But before we leave the Department of Education, I want to quote Roxanne Garza. She was the Chief of Staff in the Office of Post-Secondary Education under President Joe Biden. And this is what she said about the department with the cuts and describing what the Department of Education does. She said this: much of what the department does, like investigating civil rights complaints and helping families apply for financial aid, is labor-intensive, and says that how those things will not be impacted with fewer staff, I just don't see it. Well, let me translate that. So the Department of Education, apparently its mission is simply to harass the states in what they're trying to do and spend more government money so that you can spend more government money.
Tony, understand this. You're hearing from a bureaucrat. You're hearing from someone who's never touched the free market, who's never spent a night trying to figure out how to make a business run, how to make sure that the return on investment there. So that's what we're listening to, and that's why we have to change this. I would say this: we're on our way. Thank goodness for innovators, and innovators will give us opportunities here in D.C. to know how to innovate better in legislation, and we're going to make that happen for sure.
All right, Congressman Owens, we just have about 2 minutes left. Talk about the college campuses, because you've been addressing that issue as well.
Well, what we're seeing right now is an attack on our system for decades. We're having young people not having any idea what our country's about, have no pride in it, and sometimes it takes the threat of taking away funds to bring courage. Because right now our college system has no courage. These, again, bureaucrats who've never dealt with hard choices and standing up for principles. So sometimes it takes pulling money back, and they realize if you don't do it right, you run out of money at one point. That's what the free market does all the time. We're always reassessing, making hard choices, making very strong decisions on how we're going to be perceived because we want to succeed. Well, in this case here, these college campuses will now have to deal with, if you don't get it right, if you will allow anti-Semitism, you allow divisiveness in your campus, we're not paying for it. Do it on your own dime. We want to make sure our kids are the smartest, most productive, most positive people in the entire world, so we can export that to other nations, and they can benefit from what our system here, education is doing long term for sure.
Well, as you said, these are exciting times filled with potential. Does it mean there won't be some speed bumps and a few obstacles along the way? But it is a new day in America, and I think we have to seize this moment.
And Tony, thank you for being part of it, my friend. We're going to all be blessed to look back and say we were there when this remarkable change in our country happened. So thank you so much, and let's keep this thing going. We've got a good 2 to 4 years ahead of us. Looking forward to it for sure.
All right, Congressman Burgess Owens, thanks so much for joining us. Always great to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. All the best.